Hi guys, good morning. My name is Niladri Mukherjee and I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. I practice here in Guelph, Ontario. Today in this video, I thought to talk about how can I study in Canada if I am over the age of 35 or 40 or 45 or even say 50, right? These are obviously the question that I receive quite a few times a day, because we all know that express entry system for outside Canada candidate is almost non-existing these days. It's been over a year. There has not been a single express entry draw. The government is prioritizing more and more onto the ones, the candidates who are already there in Canada, holding some kind of temporary residency status, and trying to give them permanent residency to the extent possible by launching more and more program. 2021 has proved that point. Keeping in mind the way the cases are rising again thanks to this Omicron variant and whatnot, I would personally estimate or assume that the situation in 2022 as far as Canadian immigration is concerned will probably not be very different as compared to 2021, meaning that the government would probably keep on trying to pushing more permanent residency status to the people that are already there in Canada as a temporary resident, either as a worker or as a student, right? Because obviously these guys are already accustomed to the Canadian, Canadian work environment, Canadian climate and whatnot. They're already in Canada, and hence it is obviously a way lot easier for the government to give them permanent residency rather than bringing more and more people from outside Canada. Now, to that extent, obviously, if you are in the age of 35 or 40 or like whatever age these days, right, even under 30, even if your CRS score is, say, 500, you are still not getting an invite because there has not been an express entry draw since last 1 year, and nobody knows when the draw opens, like what the CRS score is going to be, right? So study is probably the only logical and feasible option that we can consider, at least for the year 2022. The age, I have put in an age 35, and that could be 40 or 45 as well. I have put in an age on the title of the video because somebody that is continuing his or her education, meaning that somebody that has just completed graduation and on the verge of getting a post-graduation, for example, or somebody that has just done his or her +2 and is on the verge of getting a graduation, is being considered as a continuing student, meaning that somebody that is obviously continuing his or her education. So the possibility of getting a study visa for them, or as far as the myths suggest, is a relatively easier as compared to somebody who is having maybe 15 years of age and 15 years of gap between the last education and the proposed education to Canada. Now, I don't want to just go straight dive into it and say that this is possible and that is not possible. Let's just go back to law and see what the government tells us as far as the students are concerned, the international students here in Canada are concerned, and then we could figure out whether you should apply or whether you should try to apply for a study visa if you're in that age bracket that I'm talking about, maybe in between 30 to 45, right? So who is a student in Canada? Who is an international student in Canada, right? Section 216 of the Immigration Refugee Regulations, IRPR, clearly states that a student is somebody that is following all the criteria of the law and is given a due permission to enter into the country. Now, what are those sections of law? In a nutshell, there are two primary criteria that you have to fulfill, regardless of your age, regardless of your education background, regardless of your work experience. There are two primary criteria that you have to fulfill, right? Number one, you have to prove yourself to be a bona fide student in line with the definition as laid out in the Immigration Refugee Protection Regulations of Canada. And secondly, you have to prove that you'll be back to you'll be back to your home country after the specified period of stay is over. Now, these are very, very specific criteria. This does not talk about age, this does not talk about your experience, etc. It just says a simple thing. It says that you have to prove yourself to be a bona fide student. Okay? The term bona fide is very, very important here. And the second most important criteria here is that you will be able to fund your study without being working in Canada. This does not mean that you will not be working in Canada while you're studying in Canada, right? You can do that if you have the permission to do that. But in your submission letter, in your letter of, in your whole application, you have to prove that you have sufficient money, you have sufficient fund, that through which you are able to study in Canada without working, right? And the term, if you remember, I said the term bona fide student is very important. It is important because do understand a student visa or a study permit is a part of temporary residency applications to Canada. And as a part of any temporary resident visa applications, you have to prove that you'll be back to your home country after the specified purpose and the period of your stay is over. Meaning that if you are being admitted to Canada as a student, you will have to prove to the Canadian government that you are coming here merely to study and that you'll be back to your home country after your study is over. This is the law. This is something you have to prove at the time of submitting your application. This obviously does not mean that you will be back to your home country after the study. The government also doesn't want you to back to your home country, which is why the government is giving you a post-graduation work permit, right? Which is why there are a lot of provincial nominee programs that gives you extra points, which you gain through Canadian work experience. And you gain Canadian work experience primarily once you are here as an international student, graduate, and then you start working in Canada, right? So the government knows that. But this is the law and we have to abide by the law at the time of submission of the student visa application. So if you go by the law, it does not say anything about the age, right? Whatever myth that we have in terms of that, if I'm 38 or 40 or 45, my study visa would be rejected. Those study visas get rejected if you are not able to submit a perfect application. This does not mean that if you are 35 or 40 and if you are able to prove that you will be a bona fide student, you are able to prove that you do not have a criminal background, you are able to prove that you will be back to your home country after the specified period of your stay is over, and you also have to prove that your course selection, your university selection, your college selection is very much in line with what you want to do in your life, right? In future, if you are able to prove that and that you have sufficient fund to fund your education, there is no way that your study visa would be rejected, right? And if such an application is rejected, then obviously there are a lot of other, I would say, sections on the law that deals with those sections. Like those things, like we can go for judicial review, like we can go for an appeal. But again, here we are just talking about the possibility. So let's just, come back to the possibility option. So now going back on that, I see a lot of videos or a lot of comments on YouTube that really talks about the success ratio, right? I have seen I have watched a couple of videos that says that if you're at the age of 35 or 40, your study visa rejection rate is like over 70% and your acceptance rate is only 25 or 30%. Now, I just want to know what are the sources, because there is no government website, there is nothing in the lieu of Government of Canada that gives you that kind of statistics with respect to either acceptance or rejection, simply because it is case specific, right? Each of these applications are being reviewed quite independently by the immigration officers, and regardless of whatever you have done in your own life, if your application is perfect, you're bound to get a visa. If your application is not perfect, regardless of your, unfortunately, your age or whatever else, your application will still be rejected. So it all boils down to making sure that you're able to submit a perfect application, regardless of what your age are. Now to that end, let me just suggest you a couple of options. Now these are obviously the general options that will apply to anybody that is trying to apply for a study visa that falls within that age, right? For individual cases, I will strongly suggest you guys to come for a consultation with me and I'll be able to deep dive into your individual case. But this is what I feel after going through a lot of these queries. Number one, people do not do their own research these days. Mostly they tend to watch the YouTube videos, they just rush up to those local educational consultants and try to get inference from them. Guys, I had said it in the previous video and I am saying it one more time. Do not go to those local educational consultants if you are not sure what course you want to study, which university you would like to go, whether you would like to go for a 1-year course or a 2-year course, right? Do your own research, because educational consultants get paid from the colleges, right? They get paid by the colleges. So their inclination will always be to sell those courses, those universities and etc. that give them higher commission. You have done your education previously, you may have a work experience of some years, and then you know what you're trying to do in your life and why do you want to move to a country. Do your own research, reach out, as I've said before, shortlist a province or a few provinces, shortlist a few colleges and universities under those provinces, look at their courses, analyze your budget, reach out to those colleges, their marketing team and try to get as much information as possible. These are all private colleges and private universities. They will be more than eager to share as much information to you as possible because you are the cash cows for them, right? So do your own research. That is your first thing to do. Secondly, this is very important for you to understand that most of us unfortunately fail to understand. Your experience, if you are experienced enough, regardless it's 1 year experience or 2 year experience or 15 years of experience, your experience after your last education is considered to be more valued as against your education, meaning that if you have done your masters in finance and you passed out in the year 2005, for example, this is 2022. For the last 16-17 years, you have been doing completely different thing. For example, you are doing something in project management, which has absolutely nothing to do with finance. So you should ideally try to choose a course that would enhance your career in the line of project management rather than trying to, making a correlation with your degree that you might have done long back in which your work experience has no relation, right? So you should ideally try to find out something in project management rather than trying to find out something in finance. In other words, try to focus more on your previous experience and trying to find a relevant course that you think should benefit you in the future rather than going by whatever education you have done in the past, right? So your experience is more important than your previous education while you choose a course in Canada if you have work experience after your last education, right? Thirdly, this probably I cannot stress enough, and that is your English. I get a lot of emails and saying that I barely scored CLB 6, but I can qualify under SDS. Guys, we have to be realistic here. If you are not able to score sufficient in English, that automatically gives the officer reason to reject your application, saying that if you are not able to score sufficient in either English or French, depending obviously what your main language is, you will not be able to establish yourself in Canada. And it's not really about establishment, that you will not be able to understand the teaching methodologies here in Canada, hence you will not be considered as a bona fide student. So English is something, or French if you are a French, is something that you should give paramount importance on. You should score a decent, now there is no hard and fast rule that if you score a CLB 6, your application will be rejected as compared to if you have scored CLB 9. It all boils down to the completeness of the application. But English or French, your language score is superbly important while lodging for your student visa application to Canada. Thirdly, and probably most importantly, which is probably a summation of everything, lodge a proper application. It is not about application lodge. When I say lodge a proper application, I do not mean like fill out the forms properly that you can do anyways without anybody's help, right? I mean, do your research starting from your research phase to the submission of your final application, including writing a proper statement of purpose, letter of intent, or whatever is required, has to be done properly. If any of these things lack, then probably your study visa would be refused. So make sure you do things very, very properly. Check and recheck before submitting a final file. Do not commit silly mistakes. And guys, letter of intent or statement of purpose or letter of explanation, whatever you call it, gives you the forum, gives you the platform, if you will, to write, to say your words, to convey your feelings to the officers, and it gives you the opportunity to convince the immigration refugee protection of immigration officers that why your study visa, why you are a bona fide student, and hence why they should approve your study visa. I see a lot of improperly written letter of explanation that has absolutely nothing to do that's absolutely not the way as to how really the letter of explanation is written. This is superbly important. Make sure you do the application. First of all, you start with the research. You do the research properly, identify the course, and then submit your application in a manner, obviously prepare all your legal paperwork and everything, and then apply and then submit your application in a manner that gives you the opportunity to submit a foolproof application, right? At least in your mind. If you need professional help, more than welcome to drop me a line. But make sure you do at least your part properly, right? So burst out all those myths. There is nothing like if you're 35, 40 or any age, you have no chance for getting a study visa. We have to accept the reality these days, right? Because if you want to come to Canada, say in the year 2022 or 2023, I do not personally foresee, except a select few, many other options than studies. Yes, it is expensive. Yes, it is difficult. Yes, you have to go back to your student life. But guys, getting a Canadian degree is amazing, right? You are able to go back to the college if nothing else. And then obviously once you graduate, you'll get a job, you'll have your Canadian experience, and that leads to many paths for PR, your permanent residency, and eventually to citizenship, right? So make sure you do your work well. If you need professional assistance, please feel free to drop me a line, contact@nuvonation.ca. I'll be more than happy to assist you guys. See you in the next video. Thank you very much.